There's a nice young man. There's a nice young man washing my car outside as well, which makes it even better.
Brilliant.
That's really efficient, Sue, I have to say. You know, shopping, car wash, coffee, all in the one go. Fantastic.
Well, it's lovely to welcome you all this morning. We've gone onto Facebook Live. If you look top left on your screen, you will see we are live. We stay on here for only a short while and then we come off and then we natter about all sorts of things. They teach me Scottish words, Sue, and all sorts of things. So it's lovely to welcome Sue Culver this morning. She's a great friend of ours and she's coming to share with us, and I will leave her to tell you whatever it is she's got planned this morning. Thank you, Sue.
Yeah, well, I think Bob has asked me to talk about my quilt, and I was due to go on sabbatical last May, but of course we were plunged into lockdown, which meant my sabbatical couldn't go ahead at that time. And I'd always been interested in quilting as a way of sort of capturing history or culture or just family traditions and things. And I was due to go across to the States to visit one or two quilting communities out there, because the tradition, although it originally came from this country and went over there, it kind of is a much stronger crafting tradition over there than it is here. And in a place called Paducah, there's a marvellous national quilting museum, and that's where I was going to take myself off to. But anyway, it didn't happen. And so I postponed my sabbatical forward for 12 months, thinking by then it'll be all right, we'll be able to do things. And of course, how wrong I was. And especially not given the announcement that the Prime Minister is going to make today. But one thing that I very quickly realised was that the whole pandemic thing was a point in time that I could record on a quilt. So I used a quilting pattern called Trip Around the World as an inspiration, because the virus was worldwide. And it's a particular quilting block pattern. And for those of you that do quilt, you'll realise that all these patterns have a story behind them of where they've come from and why they are what they are. And I began to do a little bit of research into this and couldn't find any history of Trip Around the World until I realised it had changed its name. And it originates from the Amish tradition, which is a strong quilting tradition in America. And it's called Sunshine and Shadows. And it was intended to replicate the passage of the sun around the log cabins that they lived in, so that different parts of the quilt or different parts of the cabin is highlighted and then goes into shadow. And so this particular block, Sunshine and Shadows, became the template of the quilt that I wanted to make. And then when it came to choosing the colour palette, of course, the rainbow theme, apart from it being one of my favourite themes for a whole host of reasons, whether that's because it's a scriptural thing, but I mean, it doesn't belong to us as Christians, to be honest. There's references to rainbows in much older texts than the Bible. But also the rainbow has been adapted by many groups, or not stolen, that's the wrong word, but taken up by many groups to represent inclusivity and openness. And we see that in things like in South Africa, became the Rainbow Nation because it wanted to reinvent itself as a place where everyone could live together in harmony in the post-apartheid era. And of course, more commonly in this country, we see it with the LGBTQI community. And indeed, the rainbow colour has been added to with the blacks and the browns and the pinks and the pale blues and whatnot to include transgender and all those things around sexuality and gender and that whole bag of issues that I'm sure we all, well, sometimes scratch our heads with, sometimes wholeheartedly embrace, sometimes feel uncomfortable about. But in a sense, the whole rainbow thing means we can hold those views and still journey together. Anyway, and of course, during the pandemic, the rainbow appeared in everybody's window as a sign of hope, didn't it? I know I had rainbows on my dustbin with a big thank you and a love heart to the dustbin men who emptied my dustbin through the pandemic, things like that. So the rainbow became my colour palette. And during lockdown, one thing that I had done is I got a little sewing group together and we made scrubs and we made disposable surgical gowns and for the NHS and got to the point where we'd made over 5,000 sets of each. And I started making face masks as a way of raising a bit of money for the food bank. And so the materials for this quilt were all the leftover fabrics, the little scraps that we cut off because, you know, the size was wrong, of these masks and scrubs. And in quilting terms, learning for me, and I've been delighted at some of the things I've learned. But these little scraps get called crumbs. And for me, as a Christian, ministering up the crumbs is very, very powerful. Especially when I think about that story in the Bible where the woman kind of approaches Jesus and says that she's worthy to gather up the crumbs under his table. And so it did resonate with me. And I also am a member of a couple of quilting sites on Facebook, quilting groups. And so I put a little thing on the group saying, this is what I'm doing. Would you like to join in and send me your lockdown story and a little scrap of fabric that I can include in the quilt? And before you know it, I had envelopes coming from all around the world. And I've included these tiny little scraps of fabric that people sent. There were some came from a wedding dress that somebody'd made, a funeral shroud, quilts that had been made for people in hospital. I mean, just all kinds of things came. And so they got stitched into the quilt. And one of the things that I've done a bit unusual because but this whole lexicon of language that we've all had to learn this year, whether it's stay home, stay safe, protect the NHS, or COVIDiot, or Jabs Army, or even little political comment like Barnard Castle, or next slide, please. I've embroidered all these phrases all over the quilt. And on the borders of the quilt, I've also included some poetry that people have written through lockdown, again, with a little political edge to it for me, because that's me. And also an excerpt from the Queen's speech, which talks about how rainbows painted by children was representative of the whole community coming together and caring for each other. So all this was put on the quilt, and the quilt is king size. And I knew there was no way I could actually do the quilting of a king size quilt on my machine at home. So I found a lady called Laura who runs a long arm quilting service, and she has this business called the Quilt Sanctuary. And so I tootled across to Wales and took my quilt top with me and the batting and the backing fabric. And she put it on her machine, which is amazing. I mean, this machine is about the size of a small room. It wouldn't even fit in my lounge. And although it was quite narrow, because it's the quilt goes on rollers, it was very long. And she quilted this quilt for me. and it's covered in love hearts, which was just felt so appropriate. And I'm in the process now of just finishing it off by stitching. I have to hand stitch the binding round, which around a king size quilt, you can imagine is it's no mean feat, I can tell you. And the quilt next week will go off to Methodist Conference, and the intention is it will be on the communion table for the conference love feast, because they can't have communion together, but they are going to have a love feast. So that will be on the communion table. And the bit that's really poignant is that the conference love feast, as far as I'm aware, that is what I've been told, unless they've changed the order of business, but it falls immediately before the vote on the God in Love Unites Us report. So that just feels hugely poignant. And later this afternoon, I have to record a piece to camera telling the conference exactly what I've told you about how this quilt has come about, and how it's not a quilt of despair. You know, I've not called it the COVID quilt. I've actually called it a moment in time, because that's what it is, and it captures sort of the year between when we went into lockdown and the first anniversary. And right in the centre of the quilt, there I've embroidered the number of people that died. You know, this phrase that the government used, within 28 days of testing positive for COVID-19. So the number is 126,000, I think it's 873. And where it's terribly personal for me is there's also a bit on the quilt that says, "Goodbye, Dad." Because the year anniversary of lockdown, gosh, I'm going to get emotional now. My dad, he died and was recorded in that final figure on that last day as a person that's died with COVID. So that's the story of the quilt. Lord knows what I'm going to do with it after conference. I don't know, but I guess I can, I don't know, get some bright spark to organise a speaking tour and tout it around the country for phenomenal speakers' fees, but I don't think so somehow. So that's the story of the quilt, everyone. I mean, I could chat on for hours, but I'm happy to take questions if anybody wants to ask me anything about it. Was that all right, Bob?
Absolutely brilliant. I'll be enjoying your coffee as well. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions for Sue, you'll need to unmute yourself.
It actually says on my quilt, unmute yourself.
You see, lots of us need instructions with the technology.
I know. But isn't it amazing how in this year, how most of us have learned new skills with technology that we would have never have learned before.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just been stunning, the speed at which we've managed to keep up. And I'm hoping that far from going back to normal, we will continue on that trajectory and learn new ways of being community together, especially in church. So anyway, sorry, I'll shut up now.
Jacqueline, are you wanting to say something?
Yeah, I just wondered if it would be possible for Sue to send us a picture of the quilt.
I will. I haven't got a picture of the finished one, but I'm going to try and share a picture of the top before it went to be quilted. So just bear with me on my mobile. Hang on, I'll see if I can do that. Oh, it says only the host can share.
So try again. I made you a co-host.
Or allow me to share. Is that possible?
It should do it now. Well, I think she's frozen.
Right. Okay. Now you're going to have to bear with me while I find the photo.
Okay.
Yes, I'm just looking for the photos now that I'm going to share with you. So, yeah. So,
Just to say, Sue, at the moment it's looking a bit dark at the moment. The picture's not coming through.
Can't see it at all. No.
And I think we've just lost her.
I think we've lost the link to Sue. Yes.
Yes. Though she's pictures there, yeah. She's still with us. She's lost her sound.
Okay.
What I'll do is we'll come off Facebook Live at the moment, and then we'll
Yeah.
come back to that in a minute.